An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 183. I'm Aaron Pollier.
I'm Darlene.
We watched The Deadly Bees from 1966. Yes, this is a movie that is on MST3K, so I have seen it before, and you've likely seen parts of this before, at the very least, in the MST3K, but we did not watch the MST3K, we watched the actual film. We actually ended up watching it on Plex, believe it or not,
yeah.
Which it was free with commercials, though you can rent it on Amazon Prime if you don't have that. Anyway, there's lots of options. You can even watch the MST3K version if you really wanted to. But other than like maybe the MST3K version, Darlene, have you ever seen this movie before?
No.
Okay.
Not in its entirety.
Well, I mean, besides, like, ignoring the MST3K.
I remember watching something that had talking about horror of insects on in movies, and some of the footage was in that.
So, in a documentary, so you haven't seen this before outside of the MST3K.
Right.
Okay.
And it's, according to the movie itself, it's A Taste for Honey was the book.
There was a book it was based on, yes, but it was lightly based on the book. And I can say that I have seen this before, even without the MST3K. I have actually seen it. It was because I remember some of the B scenes specifically from being a kid. So obviously I watched this on some sort of creature feature on WGN out of Chicago some weekend growing up.
Not a kid's movie, though. You would get terrified of bees over this.
Oh, really? See, I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know. I think this is a strange film. Like, this is not anywhere as terrifying as, like, The Birds is for birds. Does that make sense? I mean, there's some kind of frightening things in this, but it's no more frightening than any other monster movie. Let's put it that way. So, any other thoughts that you have before we start?
No, not really.
We actually have a lady in the lead. She's actually the lead role. It's Susanna Lay as Vicki Robbins,
which is supposed to be a singer.
She's like a pop singer. Yeah. And this is like 1966, so she's I don't know. She's that kind of style of singer, that sort of like British pop from the 1960s. And you know what? Whoever they got to sing, even if it was her, good job. It fits in with the time period. And the movie actually pretty much starts there, but that it's jumping ahead. There's a couple scenes right before we're introduced to her. I'm just saying.
There's a couple scenes before a scene before you get to the credits, even.
Well, it's just a beekeeper opening up a hive and shaking
them out.
And there's bees that end up swarming over the credits, etc. Okay, but
on a blue background.
What I'm trying to get to is that we have a lady in the lead. She's actually, even before we get to what works and what doesn't, we can say that she was actually a very good actress in this and was a star in many other films. In fact, all of the lead actors in this, Frank Finley and Guy Dolman, they all have a pretty good repertoire of stuff under their belts. Like, I see 145 credits for Frank Finley on Internet Movie Database, and 56 for Guy Dolman. Guy Dolman was actually on the beach which is not a movie we have done for Earth versus Soup, though I think we should do it. It is actually a serious movie, though. It is science fiction because it takes place after a nuclear war. So it does fit into Earth versus Soup, but we should not expect to smile or laugh. I've read the actual original book for that. I have seen this film. Um, and I've talked a little bit about it with Mike on an episode of, let's see here, Future Imperfect for post-apocalyptic films. This is one of the films that falls into the category of there is no hope, expect everyone to die at the end, but there's meaning to everyone's deaths. So it's unlike a lot of other films. It's sad in its own way, but it's not pointless. Regardless, let's get back to the Killer Bees. I just saw that he had On the Beach on his credits, and that is a good
Yeah,
film.
but it takes being in
A specific mood.
Yeah, because either that or it'll eat you.
Well, the serious post-apocalyptic movies, yes, because I mean, you can get into the silly ones like, I don't know, Mad Max, like all those, and those are just kind of fun. They're just fun sort of fantasy movies that are just really well done action. But On the Beach is sort of like The Day After, or I put it in the same category as like The Day After. So that means, yeah, it's not going to make you want to slit your wrists watching it, but it's still sad. And then there's Threads, which we talked about on that Future Imperfect episode, where I was like, you cannot watch Threads without somebody being there to talk to, because this movie will mess you up. Anyway, let's get back to the Deadly Bees. I keep saying Killer Bees. It's the Deadly Bees. Okay, so we have the credits, and then we go to a London government ministry, and
it says Whitehall on the corner.
Hence London. It's in London. It's a government ministry. We've been to Whitehall, Darlene. We've walked those streets, and it's an unnamed ministry.
Yes, but it's just a office.
Yeah, it's an
with
office
two
with two
people.
guys in it. Like, and they're clearly just pencil pushers. That's all they are. And I don't know if it's supposed to be kind of funny that these guys are just completely, their jobs are meaningless, because one's just doing like a crossword puzzle.
The other one is opening up letters to the ministry and reading them. And he reads.
He's a younger guy, yeah.
Yeah, he reads this one and goes, should we be concerned about this one at Seagull Island about killer bees?
Yeah, this guy has supposedly developed killer bees, and he's going to prove that he has killer bees by killing somebody. Now, the older guy says, no, we get a letter like every week from this crackpot. Don't worry about it. He's harmless. Now, that being said, after the events of this movie, that guy specifically is going to jail for mismanagement and not reporting.
Well, at the very end, he's the one that's walking up to the house, isn't he?
No, or is that's the younger guy.
That's the younger guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That guy is going to jail. He's going to jail. His life is ruined because he just did crossword puzzles rather than actually like ever doing even a base, hey, I'm going to send this letter off to the police, as like this guy is making threats. He might be a crackpot, but he's still making threats to kill somebody.
Yes. And you shouldn't be ignoring something like that.
No, you should not be ignoring. So, like, when that came across in that first scene after the credits, I was like, oh, crap.
The one thing I will say at this point, it's a little bit jarring because you go from the beehives to the bees office. In the blue background to the office, and then it jumps to a TV
studio. Yeah, and this is interesting.
Well, to a group of young kids doing singing.
Young kids?
Yeah.
One of them is actually the guitarist from the Rolling Stones, believe it or not, in this movie as a cameo. But it's before.
And they're called the Byrds?
Yeah, it's the Byrds. Yeah, which is kind of weird that I actually mentioned the Byrds.
But isn't there a group that was called the Byrds?
Yeah, I think so. And we're introduced to a pop star named Vicki Robbins, who is talking to her assistant, and her assistant actually doesn't seem to care.
Doesn't care that she's tired,
And Vicky's like, I'm so tired, and she's like, look, just get through this,
and this, because she gives them like three things.
Yeah, you need to do 3 different things still over the next couple days,
and then you can sleep.
And then you can sleep. You can have months off. And there's a couple plot points that are later on in the movie that are dropped that deal with these other things that she needs to be doing, but it's not really dropped in a bad way. It makes sense that from the perspective of the movie, those don't make any difference, so therefore why focus on them?
But they did have scenes where that came in play.
Yes, it did. It did. So like these other things are actually seemingly important, but because of her health, as we will quickly see, they're really pushed to the side. I know I'm kind of going around this, but she actually has this beautiful like fur coat, and she goes out and it looks like it's a live recording.
So I think it is a live recording. I don't know. Maybe it's a TV show.
It could be a taping, but it really comes across as a live broadcast.
She's not singing because the tape keeps going after she passes out.
Yeah. So she's singing, and yeah, it's obviously lip sync because they don't have a microphone on her, right? This is clearly they're like looping the audio through the whatever transmission they're doing.
They've got a tape because
but they're putting it through their transmission rather than having to have like this giant boom mic right next to her, because some of her singing is actually kind of quiet.
Yeah, it is it's
a ballad.
I'm trying to think of I was trying to think of one of the like Carpenters kind of song.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Right?
And it's a love ballad from a female.
And one of the little details in this scene that I actually appreciated was the fact that, to me, when it seemed like a live performance, that you didn't have like, oh, here's a camera crew and like there's a guy like off in a booth. There's a guy off in a booth with like 6 other people that are all on controls. There's like 3 different camera crews with like 3 people each.
And there's a guy
moving and doing things.
And there's a guy in the background that is making gestures.
Yeah, like trying to give people direction that are the camera operators. Like
the ones that are moving the camera.
This didn't look like a cheap setup for filming a quick scene. This actually looked like they put a lot of effort into making this seem very real. Credit where credit's due.
And at the time that she passes out, the framework goes from one camera to another, and all of a sudden both of them get off their camera and go running to her, and then you see her laying on the ground,
and the music keeps playing
because
they were looping.
Here's the kudos I'm giving. That was a great
transition.
Yeah.
So she's taken to a hospital where her doctor says, look, she is exhausted. She's actually having that was like a panic attack of sorts. And she needs 3 weeks of rest minimum to get back on her feet. You've been pushing her. He's like, tells her you've been pushing yourself too hard. It's really kind of wrecked you. And here's the thing. This is not a pop star that has been doing drugs. None of that is ever shown on screen. She doesn't even really seemingly drink alcohol. She's squeaky clean. It's just that she really has been pushing herself hard. This is not some sort of act.
This is exhaustion.
This is full-on exhaustion.
This is not
mental. Her high or passing out from an OD or anything like that. She truly is loving her work and doing a lot of it. But it's also that her manager is pushing her really hard to do specific
don't think it's the manager, because the manager, isn't he the one that calls?
That tries to keep calling her to make sure that she's back in town in 2 days.
No, then it's not the person that called.
He is being a bit of a dick and inconsiderate. But anyway, her doctor says, hey, look, I know a guy out on Seagull Island. I've worked with him before. He has a farmhouse. He rents rooms to people that I send out there for rest and relaxation, because Seagull Island, dude, there's a couple farms, there's a pub, that's it.
a little town.
Yeah, tiny little. It's tiny.
Yeah, it has a constable that actually still runs the doggone bar.
Runs the pub. He's the pub's landlord.
Yes.
Yeah, and his daughter is there. Like this is an island that seemingly only has maybe maximum a dozen people on it. It's very, very rural and remote.
And it's very big for being an island.
Yeah, but we could also be seeing it in a specific time where all the tourists have gone or something like that.
I'm talking about the chase scene.
Oh, no, I don't think so at all. Like, I actually think that it just could be that the roads are very windy on it because it actually has a lot of topography for as small as it is. So these roads are constantly winding around through
like
whatever.
It's chasing around the outskirts.
Yeah. So anyway, the doctor gives this guy a call and says, we're introduced to one of the main characters, Hargrove. This man's Mr. Hargrove, and he's a farmer. He's always out working. His wife is a bitch.
Okay, excuse me.
His wife is a bitch.
Okay.
You have to admit it.
The marriage has fallen out.
For no reason.
We don't know what the reason.
We're not shown anything.
We're not shown anything. She's just tired of life.
Yes.
I would give that. She's not answering the phone when this call comes.
The phone's like right next to her, and she just refuses to pick it up, and
she keeps feeding the dog.
Yeah, and then he goes, you can pick up the phone. You can pick up the phone. I'm out here taking care of your farm. And she constantly says, this is my farm, but she does nothing.
But you're taking care of these honeybees. That's all you're interested in, is honeybees.
It's continually shown that that's not all he's interested in. He's actually taking care of all of the animals.
I know this, but I'm also telling you, not just call her a bitch, because the marriage has fallen out, and it's probably both of their fault.
Well, if the only thing she ever attacks him on is that he is always busy taking care of animals. She bitches about the bees one time. She complains about how he's always out of the house doing work on the farm. But it's her farm. She holds that over him, but she refuses to do any of the work.
Yes.
She refuses to even help with
Aaron, I'm just saying.
I'm trying to explain like what's happening when Mr. Hargrove has to go and find Doris. See, Mrs. Hargrove refuses to do anything except pet the dog and smoke cigarettes.
Yes, she does that.
Which includes not doing a damn thing for any boarders that are coming that actually provide them an income. She will not help. She doesn't cook. Anything like that. So Mr. Hargrove's
because Dolores does that.
Doris has to do that because she refuses to do anything. And this is why Mrs. Hargrove...
I don't even understand why... It's Dolores or...
Doris.
Doris. I thought it was Dolores.
Why Doris has to come out and help?
I don't know why Doris comes out and helps if she doesn't have to.
Because she actually likes Mr. Hargrove. He's a sweet old man.
He's not old. He's middle-aged.
He's middle-aged. But it's also income for her. And you know what? If Mrs. Hargrove wants to do shit and sit on her ass, and it gives her money, it gives Doris money, why not? Because Mrs. Hargrove won't even cook a meal.
And you find out later that Doris actually, after in the afternoon, she has to be at her dad's tavern to do that. So she's holding two jobs.
Yes, she is. She's holding two jobs, and Mrs. Hargrove, again, won't do a damn thing. This is why I have no sympathy for her, even if their marriage has broken down, because Mrs. Hargrove is taking no responsibility for her own life. Like, if Mr. Hargrove said, fine, it's your farm, I'm leaving, what would she do?
You don't know what's gone before, is what I'm saying.
I'm just saying that inside the movie, she is an unsympathetic character entirely.
You're not supposed to sympathize with her, no.
Okay, so... Mr. Hargrove says, fine, I'll let Vicky come out. There is no tourists out here right now. It's after the normal season, so we have rooms. And can she pay? And the doctor's like, yeah, of course. She's kind of famous. She can pay, no problem. And Hargrove isn't like charging out the nose or anything like that. He doesn't. He actually seems to be a reasonable person again, but he doesn't know who she is. So that's how kind of isolated this island is. Is that he's never really
I don't think he
heard of her.
cares.
No, he doesn't care.
Because there's no radios going on over there. There's no TVs going on.
No.
You don't.
Doris knows who she is.
Yeah, Doris knows, but the only radio there is the radio that either Doris brought or Vicky brought.
Vicky brought one, but
it's a tiny portable.
Yeah, it is. It's really tiny. Anyway, Hargrove goes into town to find a girl to help, and this is where we're introduced to Doris, who's a pretty young girl. I'm trying to find the actor, Katie Wilde, and let's see what else she's been in. I should have had this up. Oh, well, she was in the Avengers for one episode. They Came from Beyond Space. She was a girl in the street. So she really didn't have any super big roles. Because I mean, we've seen They Came from Beyond
TV,
Space.
it looks like.
Lots
41 episodes of Space Force.
Yeah. And now I have to go see if she's been in like Doctor Who at all. But it does not look like it. So anyway, she's actually a good actress in this too. We're introduced to her, and she agrees and says, "I'll be right out there to get the room prepared tonight." She's all about it, and then she learns who it is. So in this first scene where they're talking at the pub, I thought there might have been something between Hargrove and her, because she seemed to be a little coy with him, but it turns out it's that she really didn't know what he was wanting her to do and was concerned that she had to do farm work. Because this was after the season, right? After the tourist season. So what the hell does he need me for? And that's why she was being coy. Again, it was my thoughts immediately turned to like, oh, this is kind of sinister, but it's not.
I didn't even get that.
Yeah, it's not. It's totally not. She in fact comes out there, meets the dog. The dog's name is Duchess.
No, Tess.
Because that's the Duchess. That's the short for Duchess. They call her Tess, but her full name's like Duchess. And the dog likes her. She actually seems to like the animals.
But the wife will not allow her, Doris, to feed the dog.
No, because the dog is hers. Right?
Yet, in another scene, Vicky takes the dog out.
Yeah, and because I guess it gives more time for Mrs. Hargrove to smoke cigarettes by herself, sitting in her chair and staring at a wall. Like, God, she is absolutely unsympathetic.
Aaron.
I know. So,
You've said it. Let's end that.
Vicky comes out. We learn that she also really likes dogs. And we actually see the first slight bit of humanity out of Mrs. Hargrove, because it seems like Mrs. Hargrove seemingly likes Vicky's attitude.
And her love for the dog.
That's it. Like, this is the only kind of redeeming thing that ever comes out of Mrs. Hargrove. But
I really think Mrs. Hargrove is very depressed. And I understand when, later on when the dog dies, that's why she's just like distraught and doesn't.
Because that dog is the only thing she's ever cared about, seeming to us as a viewer of the movie, the only thing that she's ever had any kind of connection to. So anyway, what we have is Vicky coming, and then she takes the dog out for a walk, and she ends up meeting another resident of the island. His name is Manfred. Okay, so Manfred is played by a guy named Frank Finley. He owns a small, let's say, cottage, and they end up like having a conversation. He has a cat. She comes in, and it turns out that he also raises bees, just like Mr. Hargrove, Ralph Hargrove. But instead of having like bees out in hives, out in the we don't know if he has hives like out in a field somewhere. He actually has like this window built into his study that he ends up opening and showing Vicky these beehives like right behind glass, so he can just study bees. Okay, that's a little strange, but fine. He says, hey, look, just come over for tea whenever you have a chance. I'm happy to talk. It gets lonely out here. And she's like, well, why don't you come out to Hargrove's place? Well, Hargrove and I don't really get along. Fine. We then go to Hargrove warning Vicky not to go out and visit Manfred, that he's a danger.
And he's very snippet about it.
Yeah, but looking back from the end of the film, you realize that Hargrove really has told her everything she needs to know about, Manfred. That this guy is a danger. But he is not to be trusted. He
does it in a way that a parent would do to a kid, and then the kid decides, the parent
I will blame it on
being too strict.
I will blame it on Hargrove having to deal with Mrs. Hargrove and the constant neglect that she shows to everything around her. That he's had it at this point, and the only reason he's staying is because he actually gives a shit about the farm and the animals, where she doesn't care about anything. Yeah, I know I rag on her about it, but she's a despicable character because of her neglect. Regardless, in the middle of the night, he goes out into the barn, and Vicky hears a horse freaking out, but then the horse stops. She gets dressed to go get some milk and sees Hargrove with a huge syringe filled with blood. Okay, now skipping around a little bit, we also will later see the horse having sores on his flank. Why is that?
Because he's pulling blood from the horse.
Because the horse is sick.
That's one reason, but it's also later on you find out he's trying to figure out what is causing the killer bees to attack.
Yeah, and he's taking blood from the horse because the horse has been stung so many times by the bees, but it hasn't been killed. So he's trying to figure out what's causing them to attack the horse, because the horse is a really mild-mannered horse, honestly. But at the time in this scene, it seems sinister.
It's probably the bee has stung the horse, and that woke it up.
Yeah, and he went out
and took the blood sample right off of the
sting site.
So
she's kind of unsettled by this, and we end up having a scene where Mrs. Hargrove just yells at him for working at night.
Yes, you do have that.
Like, what are you doing? You're disturbing my sleep. And he's like, I had to take a sample from...
No, she says, what are you, a vet?
And I'm like, screw you, woman. He's trying to take care of your horse and your farm.
Well, it's theirs.
Yeah, but
she hasn't given it up.
The way that she describes it is, it's her farm.
Yes, I know.
But she takes no responsibility. The next morning, we actually see Vicky using an electric toothbrush to brush her teeth, and it plugs into the wall, and I'm like, God, that's safe.
But I was like, wow, this is
66.
That's 66, and that would be a very expensive toothbrush back then.
Yeah, and it's also incredibly dangerous.
I remember having them in the 80s, and they were still expensive.
Really expensive. I remember my grandparents having a water pick, but that was it. Not electric toothbrushes. This is where she sees the sores on the horse. And then we get a scene with Vicky's agent, who has been trying to get a hold of her, but the phone has been disconnected somehow.
It's just that the
it's Mrs. Hargrove never answers the phone.
Never answers the phone.
So he's been out there. He's been trying to call repeatedly, and she just doesn't give a
And
crap.
At this time, there is one time that Vicky goes, can I call? Because my agent is going to be worrying about me, and I need to call him. And what does Mrs. Hargrove, whatever, what does she say? Oh, the phone's been out. I tried to call earlier.
Yeah, but then Vicky picks it up, and there's a dial tone.
And
she calls out.
The phone calls just after that.
Yeah, it's Mrs. Hargrove is a bitch.
She's just, yeah.
She's a piece of shit. Everything that she does is a negative interaction with people. Except that, like, one time she smiled at Vicky because Vicky pet the dog. That is it.
And takes the dog out for a walk.
And, you know, honestly, I think the dog is just happy to have actual, like, positive attention from a human being that is giving off a little bit of happiness. Because Mrs. Hargrove is just pouring off negative energy.
That is a well-trained dog, by the way.
Oh, yeah, the dog actor was very well. A good dog. We end up getting another visit. Vicky visits Manfred and tells him about the horse, and he tells her, oh, don't worry about it. And then Hargrove and Vicky go to the pub, and this is where we see bees starting to swarm around Duchess.
The dog.
Duchess the dog.
And is killed by the bees.
So we have Mrs. Hargrove and Doris run out to investigate, like, the barking and find Duchess dead. And this is where, like, Mrs. Hargrove starts crying and weeping, and I'm like, you know what? I feel bad for the dog. I don't feel bad for you, you bitch.
But then she turns around and starts pouring gasoline
on the bees.
Or kerosene. It's kerosene, not gasoline.
Yeah, and then she just lights it up.
Lights all the beehives that...
Like, I'm gonna take care of you goddamn bees.
Which is really surprising because at one point she actually grabs the honey from the out there on the outside where it's so she likes the honey, but she doesn't like the bees.
It's because it's something her husband does. That's the only explanation. Look, Mrs. Hargrove is a reprehensible person. So she douses all the hives with kerosene and lights it up, and Doris is trying to stop her. Because let's be fair, these hives are fairly close to the house. It could easily catch the house on fire. Mrs. Hargrove does not care.
You want to talk about the matte painting behind it?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I should say that these entire outdoor sets are all on a stage. They're actually all sets. Even the exterior of the houses
Not the wood scene.
Not the wood scene, but I'm talking about when the house is there.
Yes.
And it looks very good. It looks realistic. Regardless, the hives go up, but Hargrove ends up making it back just as they go up and starts trying to put out the fire with, like, a garden hose. And who knows how many of these bees died. Are these bees the ones that are the killer bees, Darlene?
No.
No. Mrs. Hargrove just slaughtered a whole bunch of hard-working honeybees for no damn good reason.
Yeah, that's thousands of dollars even then.
Yeah.
Because I've tried to buy a hive.
Now, I'll give her a little bit of... Oh, yeah. The hives are just thousands.
And ours is... The amount of stuff for one hive is like $2,000 today with the stuff that you need.
Just to start it. And these are, like, well-established, like a dozen well-established hives. I will say that, yes, she's grieving her dog, but since she is such a reprehensible person all the way through this, she just murdered innocent critters. For no good reason, by burning them alive. So, do I feel bad about Mrs. Hargrove? Nope.
I do in the next scene.
No, I don't care. She is a villain in this as much as the actual villain.
I think she needed really good psychological
Yes,
therapy.
but it does not excuse her incredibly awful behavior. So Manfred ends up talking to Vicky about bees, and Manfred says that killer bees were sent to kill his hives, and he thinks Hargrove is the one to do it.
And he shows her, 3 bees that are...
Yeah, and these are, like, the bees that are the killer bees are, like, huge.
With larger stingers.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And is this the part where he shows her that he's got a music?
Yeah, like a sound that he can, like...
There's 2 birds that he has, and he goes, right now, the male is singing to the female.
And you can't hear it.
And you can't hear it.
Yeah.
But that was dumb, because that's not...
I'm sure there's birds that can sing above our hearing range, but I mean, he has like a tape recorder that he can play, and it makes bees docile. That's it. So anyway, Doris ends up leaving from the farm. Okay, she's going back to the pub, and we see an unknown beekeeper shake a hive out. Okay, now all the bees start to swarm, and then we go back to Hargrove's farm, and the wife is out in the courtyard smoking and just kind of glaring around angrily at everything because, obviously her life is terrible.
And there's the bucket.
Yeah, and she ends up having the bees swarm on her and attack her.
And that's because she put her hands onto the bucket that had
something on
it, and she wipes it on her clothes.
She is absolutely killed. And it's good makeup actually on her. It makes her look all swollen and like blotchy. She's killed. I don't feel bad.
I do. That is not a way that.
But here's how awful she is. Hargrove actually loved her. He finds her. He looks upset. Picks her up and doesn't cry. He's just kind of like picks her up, takes her in, and calls the police. Like, he's not really tore up about it. He's just had it with her as well.
And the next scene is the constable.
Yeah, the authorities come out, and there's an inquest, and we have a scene with the ministry people reading about the death by bees on Seagull Island. All right. Now, again, the dude is going to jail. That ministry dude is going to jail. Not only do you have these weekly letters from somebody that they're not naming, that says, I'm going to kill people with killer bees, and you haven't reported it to the authorities. You then see and are specifically pointed out the fact that there was a murder, there was a death on Seagull Island from killer bees. And you did nothing.
Yes. But I thought that was a little bit later.
No, that's that scene right there. Ministry reads about the death right after Mrs. Hargrove is killed.
Okay, so then you have the inquiry at the tavern.
Yeah. So everything kind of seems like the inquiry doesn't come back with any kind of she was murdered, it was death by misadventure or something like that.
Yes.
Or it was basically an accidental death. And Manfred is there, and Manfred is there basically listening, and he doesn't argue with anything, but the inquiry basically finds that Hargrove's bees didn't do this. Like, there's no evidence that Hargrove's bees did this. They aren't... Okay, remember we saw Manfred show Vicky the large bees. Okay, that these are the killer bees. Hargrove sent them. Okay? We
don't know it at this time.
We don't know what's going on, but he says Hargrove sent them. We then have Mrs. Hargrove killed by the killer bees, and there's bees that are dead all over her. Okay? Now, we can see that those bees are not the bees that are in Hargrove's.
And that goes for the dog, too.
Yeah, they didn't kill the dog. These are not Hargrove's bees. Whose bees are they? Who's the only other beekeeper on the island? At this point, it should be incredibly obvious who the murderer is, but no one seems to be able to figure it out, except Hargrove has already known it and has been warning everybody, but no one takes him seriously.
Because he's the one of those that sent the information that there's
no, he's not the one that sent it to the ministry.
No, not the last letter, the ones before.
The ones threatening to kill somebody?
No, that there were killer bees.
Oh yeah, that there are killer bees, but it's the other guy that is... Look, Manfred's the freaking killer.
Yes, Manfred sent the last letter that went to
But he's the one that's been claiming that he has killer bees and he wants to have the ministry come out. He is the one that's been sending all the letters. Hargrove's never sent a letter.
Oh.
Hargrove has just told the local constable, who is the pub landlord, and he hasn't done anything because no one believes Hargrove. Who tried to stop all this? Hargrove. Who warned everybody, including him warning Vicky to stay away from Manfred? Hargrove.
And then at this thing that Mangrove asked for her to take pictures of?
Yeah, he says go into Hargrove's desk, take pictures of all of his paperwork, etc., etc. And I really don't get this because Manfred actually has all this information anyway. I think it's just busy work to keep Vicky off balance.
I think it's to make her accuse Hargrove.
Yeah. So that night, the bees attack Vicky, and it's after she goes back to Manfred to get all the photos developed in his dark room. she's attacked by the bees. It's the one slightly exploitation scene because she's in a bra and a night shift. So there's nothing that is seen, but I'm like, okay, she's a pretty lady in underwear.
But it makes sense.
It makes complete sense because it's the middle of the night, and the bees are like swarming her, right? So she is beating them back with like a towel, and then she gets into the bathroom and puts like a towel under the crack of the door, but the bees are still coming in. So she grabs like this perfume, dumps it all over the towel, and lights it on fire with some matches. And yeah, the smoke is pouring out. It is killing bees.
She's using the smoke to put to sleep the
because she knows
bees.
She knows enough from watching Hargrove and Manfred talk about bees at this point. Yeah, the smoke needs to the smoke is there to put them to sleep. So we switch away, and it turns out that Doris shows up and sees smoke coming out of the house, and then that's when Hargrove shows up because he's been like down in the village dealing with like the inquest and all this. Oh my god, my house is on fire. And Doris runs in, but Hargrove, like big damn hero, there's actually a fire. He runs in, busts down the bathroom door, grabs her. She is stung. Like there are these giant bees on her. He goes in, grabs her, gets her out. Okay? They put the fire out. The house does not burn down or anything like that.
And the bees disappear.
The bees disappear. So when she wakes up, she barely dresses and she takes off. Vicky, and I'm talking about Vicky. Vicky freaks out.
Vicky puts on a large white shirt and runs to the Land Rover and takes off. Rolf then has to go get a car key for the car, the other car that's there.
Yeah, I don't know what.
And then chases it until Vicky
basically isn't a great driver, or at least we should say that she's panicking and isn't driving coherently. So she wrecks the Land Rover.
And actually, this is where Hargrove takes the blame of the car accident.
Yeah.
And puts her in her bed, and has Doris watch over her.
Yeah.
Because when she wakes up, Doris is there.
Yes. So Manfred shows up because his bees are swarming near Hargrove's hives. There's a scene about that.
Yeah, that was pretty good because it's on a branch, and when you do have those things, they looked like they were forming a new hive.
Yeah. So then we have a scene with Doris, who is taking Vicky's clothes to wash down in the village because they were really muddy, and there's an actual washing machine down there rather than like a washing tub that is up at the farm. And bees start swarming her. She's smart though. She drops like everything and runs like hell and dives into a stream face first.
And it's a small stream.
Yeah, but the water protects her face enough that, well, we see that the bees are going after Vicky's red sweater. And they're leaving her alone. That's what basically saves her. It's not just the water. But she's really, really badly stung. Okay, she's really badly stung. And then we have another scene with the ministry guy who, there's somebody up the chain that gives him a call. And you hear his side of the conversation saying, no, sir, there's nothing to worry about. It's a crank letter. It's just a coincidence, blah, 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 blah. You don't have anything to worry about. And he hangs up. This guy is going to jail. Again, like every time there's a scene, this guy's digging his hole deeper. Because it's the older guy, not the younger guy. The younger guy actually seems to do his job. Or at least is trying to do his job. Where the older ministry guy is clearly not caring. Vicky ends up deciding that she is going to stay at Manfred's because she really doesn't trust Hargrove. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. There's been too many like deaths all around, like the dog,
there's
Mrs.
the
Hargrove.
Dog, there's Mrs. Hargrove, and then there's attempted bee stinging, which the authorities don't know about with Vicky. Yep. And then there's Doris that gets attacked.
And then the landlord says, I'm calling in everyone. because that's his daughter, and he's the constable. So he actually does call in, but they don't get there before the end of the film. Let's put it that way.
Vicky decides that she's scared of Hargrove and goes to stay with
Manfred. So Manfred goes to Hargrove's, gets her bags, and it turns out that he like dumps this crap all over stuff that's in Hargrove's
his jacket.
Yeah. So we end up seeing like Vicky going through his library, and it turns out that he has all of these books on beekeeping and like bee breeding.
He wrote
some. So he's been presenting himself as this like amateur that just kind of plays around with it, but it turns out like Hargrove is the amateur, really. That he has a whole bunch of hives, but Hargrove is not like a scientist and researcher about it, where Manfred actually is.
And she finds the lab.
Yeah. And so he admits to being the guy that actually has the killer bees, and they're the ones that are right behind the window.
And I can't allow you to live, is what he said. And he says he's just...
Hargrove supposedly knew about the killer bees and has been warning everybody on the island, so he's been trying to kill Hargrove, but Hargrove's been able to get away every single time so far, and other people have died, and he's like, I never meant to kill the wife or hurt Doris, but I just wanted to kill Hargrove. And yeah, she knows too much, so he needs to kill her.
And he's got this bottle that looks like perfume or cologne,
and he tries to dump it on her.
And
it turns out this is like what he calls the smell of fear. It's what attracts the bees to kill whoever has that smell.
What does she throw at him?
She like whips a book or something at him, and he like douses himself with it, and then she just like breaks the glass on the window for the bees.
No, the bees are open, and he puts the tape recorder down there.
To keep them silent.
And he takes down the tape recorder, so it goes all over him. And somehow something she's trying to keep the bees away, so she grabs the fire, that's the log in the thing, to get
keep, like, the smoke to keep them away.
And catches the rug on fire as it drops. And he's locked the front door.
So Hargrove ends up coming out with the landlord to rescue Vicky from the burning house, and Manfred is basically stung to death, and Vicky leaves Seagull Island, shaking hands with Hargrove. The end.
Oh, no, that's not the end, because a man is walking down towards
Hargrove's farm, and it's the younger ministry guy, like, finally showing up.
With an umbrella in the hole.
He's got the little bowler hat and everything.
Bowler hat and the whole 9 yards.
He's finally coming out, because I guess the older guy has finally gotten his ass fired, and now we have the younger ministry guy coming out.
And a whole burned house.
So, what worked in this movie? You can tell that we enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, but it also bored me at some times.
Sure. It's not perfect by any means, but it's a good movie. So what worked?
I actually will say the plot actually worked.
Yeah, the plot's good. Makes sense.
At the beginning, the to the beehives, to the blue screen, to the water Whitehall, to the television thing was a little bit jarring.
It was jumping around a little bit at the beginning, but what worked? What worked?
But then they decided...
The plot.
I said that.
Yeah.
But then they decided they could... It seemed like then some other cinematographer took over, because then the transitions were better.
No, I think it was that they'd done the setup that they needed to do to get everybody in their places. Then it could slow down and let everything progress, at a slower pace. I just think that they needed to have a whole bunch of stuff right at the beginning to set everyone in motion, okay? Or at least give the viewers, here are all these people that are in all these different places. They're all going to converge right after, like, the first 10 minutes. Now we can go forward. So that, to me, that's yeah, it is a little breakneck right at the beginning, or it seems to be a little jumpy at the beginning, but I'm not going to hold that against the film.
Just saying that you notice that, and it's more noticeable when the transitions become better.
Yeah.
At the end,
Sure.
you know, as it goes down the end.
I will say you said the plot worked. I will say the acting worked. I think all of the actors in this actually did a really good job. Everyone, including Mrs. Hargrove, the person who played Mrs. Hargrove, Catherine Finn, because as much as I despise that character, as an actress, she did a good job to portray that character as completely unlikable and awful.
Completely, I don't care. I'm here.
I don't care, and I'm going to make everyone's life hell to be around me.
I'm miserable, so I'm going to make you miserable.
Yeah, she's awful. I hate that character. The actress did a very good job. Susanna Ley as Vicki Robbins, stellar. Very good actress. Very good actress. Did a very good job. Charming in this. Had charisma that oozed off the screen. And guess what? There doesn't need to be a freaking love story in this. Was there?
No.
Nope. You didn't need it, even though you have a beautiful blonde actress as the lead character. You didn't have to force a love story into it. That worked. But I'm saying, like, overall, the acting worked. I'll even go so far as to say the special effects, well, you can tell, yes, they chroma keyed in bees. For 1966, that looked pretty good. In fact, the swarms, did you notice what they did with the swarms when, like, Doris was running through the woods? Like that swarm of bees that was up in the trees?
It was a spiral.
Yeah, they stirred in coffee grounds and then chroma keyed that in. And you know what? It worked. That's simple, it's cheap, it worked. I'm not saying it was perfect, but for 1966, credit where credit's due. That was great. I liked the sound design of the movie because you could get really stupid with bee sounds. No, worked pretty well. The bees were a threat in the movie, but not too much of a stupid threat. It's not like they're trying to take over the world. This is a guy with a single hive of killer bees that he has trained to attack a certain smell, and it is limited to a tiny little island. That worked. The sets worked, and it's because the exterior of the houses were a set, and you could walk inside those houses and still be on a set, but those sets were linked. Does that make sense?
Yes,
they basically built whole homes inside a studio.
I don't think it was a whole home. I think it was a door.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then they...
yeah. It wasn't a whole home. Yeah, it was, you have your facing, and then you have the rooms that are right inside, because you often had shots looking out of those rooms
and you had
out into the courtyard.
A big enough thing that your stable had a horse in it.
They had a flock of ducks.
And they had a duck that kept on getting all over the place.
You could drive a car into it.
You could drive a car into it, and they did.
Yeah, and they did. And so the sets, great. They worked. They actually worked better than they should have. Like, out of all of that, you have to say, look, the acting, to me, the top two things are the acting and the sets. They did a fantastic job, because those sets, even the exteriors, they looked like they could have been outside, because there's shrubbery. There's, like, dirt and grime and straw laying around. There's a horse hanging out. There's, like, growing vegetables and things. Like, great job, guys. Great job. Anything else that you can think of that worked?
Is there anything else to say that needs to work?
We just basically hit that most of this movie worked. Like, the vast majority of this movie worked. What didn't work?
I already said that. There was the beginning where it was
just a little jumpy at the beginning.
Too choppy.
Is there anything else that you can think of?
Nothing that would be from the 60s. Nothing that would be, if you're rating it with the 60s, that was bad.
Okay. So what we're saying is we have a minor thing that didn't work, but a lot of things that worked. So overall, I think we both recommend this film, right?
Yeah, right. It's about a 6.
So you think it's a 6? See,
6
on
or
Internet
7.
Movie Database, and again, I never give a crap about the ratings
They're at a 4.
They're at a 4. This is not okay. So you're saying this is a 6. To me, this is a 7.
Okay.
This might even be a 7.5.
I would go with a 7. Yeah.
Because there is very little in this movie that does not work. Honestly, this is a solid film. It doesn't stick around for too long. It actually is an hour, almost an hour and a half long, almost. Okay, so this is an actual movie. This isn't a 70-minute like short cash grab.
Now, the poster, I would say, needed to be a little bit better.
I'm not going to hold that against the movie,
not,
though,
but we did talk about somebody else's.
Posters are fantastic. Yeah, this poster could have been better. But this to me is a 7.5. You're agreeing that it's higher than a 6. It's a 7 to you. We both recommend it. Like I said, you can watch this for free with ads on Plex, but you can rent it on Amazon Prime. Feel free to watch it however you want. I know that when MST3K does these movies, they tend to edit certain scenes out, and sometimes they do it for gags to make the film feel a little less coherent. That's why it's really good to watch these old MST3K episodes as the original. Because if you watch, like, one of my favorite MST3Ks is the MST3K movie, which is This Island Earth. This Island Earth seems dumb when you're watching the MST3K version, but when we watched This Island Earth for episode 100, I think we did it for 100, This Island Earth is one of the best damn science fiction movies ever made. Like, it really is good. So keep that in mind. We both recommend it. Any other final thoughts, Darlene?
Nothing that I come across, except that, like I said, that chase scene behind with the rover and the car seemed to be long.
Yeah, but who knows how big the island is? It's not like they said the island was tiny. It's just that it was remote and lightly populated. So it could be, huge for all we know. It's just that there aren't a lot of people there, and it seems like there's a tourist season that this is not during. So let's leave it there. I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.